Hi, this is Pete from Tuesday Noon. Before we get started, a note on today's show. Our guest, Dr. Kahn, has spent his life working to dissect the minds of those who perform evil around us. As such, some of the content you'll hear in the next hour is of a particularly adult nature. We believe this discussion is important, as is Dr. Kahn's work, but be advised. If you find the discussion of pedophilia, sexual predation, serial murder, and the like to be offensive, please check back with us next week. Otherwise, listen on, and we hope you learned something from the experience, as we most definitely did. This week on Tuesday Noon, Dr. Stephen Kahn joins us to talk about his life's work with child molesters, sociopaths, and serial criminals. These are the characters that come together in his new book, and we'll invite them to the roundtable today on Tuesday Noon for September 5th, 2006. And here we are. It's another Tuesday, another noon.
Hello.
Seems like they keep coming. Hello, Mary. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, Pete.
Excellent. Jamie, are you here?
I'm here. I'm just listening.
Oh, Jamie.
I'm pouting.
After last week when you got the smackdown.
Yes, Pete smacked me down, so I'm on protest, so I'm just going to sit here.
You were being ornery.
Well, good. Why not?
Well, so you
Dude, it's just like being a home for you, so, you know.
I can't invite you to any sort of social function.
No, you cannot. Not unless you want
I will apologize publicly, Jamie. I'm sorry I told you that would be enough out of you.
Apology accepted.
Thank you. Duly noted. Now, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we have one of our faculty members here with us who teaches in the criminal justice program, Dr. Stephen Kahn.
Welcome,
Stephen,
Dr. Kahn.
Hello, everybody who I know.
We're very excited to have him with us. And, well, why don't I let you introduce yourself, Stephen. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your area of expertise.
All right. I'm a psychologist, and I've been working for the last 35 years in the field of corrections, among other things. But my first job after I graduated was with corrections as a psychologist for the state, where I evaluated and helped sentence all different kinds of felons. After that, I went out on my own, and I started teaching full-time, too. I taught at the University of Portland for about 10 years and other schools. And I worked for the counties doing contract work and seeing other people. And eventually I fell into where I began to specialize in the area of sex offenses because of the overwhelming numbers that were coming up at that time. And there weren't too many people who had worked with them. I had done extensive work with sex offenders at Patton Hospital in California when I was an intern, and they had a ward of 500 sex offenders. California was way ahead of us at that time. But they had a Atascadero and Patton, and I was at Patton. And I got to know the area pretty well, and I got to know the treatments pretty well. And when I came up here again, after my year-and-a-half stint, I got in with the corrections, and then I ended up with them. And now I'm the consultant to Washington County Corrections. I do a number of things for them. I do research. I deal with the POs, probation and parole officers. I do some help with other areas. And I'm kind of content in my little niche there.
Well,
you deal with all the wackos.
Well,
are you allowed to call
Is that
them
a politically correct term?
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of psychotics who are involved in this.
Oh, psychotics, okay.
And these people are really uncontrollable. They're out of touch.
They're wackos.
But the majority of criminals are very sensible and know what they're doing. In fact, they're the actors. They have the first shot at it. All we can do is react. And so they do, we try to stop. They do again, we try to stop. Everything we do, they can figure out a way to undo. There are people who figure out ways to pass polygraphs, pass plethysmographs, lie, cheat, steal everything, only because they want to keep doing what they're doing.
But who's this guy? Maybe, Mary, you're going to talk. This John Bonet thing. This is what kind of
John Mark Carr.
John Carr and the young lady. This is what kind of precipitated this idea of having this discussion was, who the heck is that guy, and what makes him confess to something that maybe he didn't really do, and what kind of people do this stuff?
Well, you know, this guy Carr has been doing these things for some time. He was actually reported to be married to two 13-year or 15-year-olds for a while, and he's been a school teacher. And we get a lot of school teachers who are involved in this kind of crime. But he's been sliding through the system, getting a little punishment, but getting off a lot. What made him confess to this one? I don't know. He might be so guilt-ridden or maybe he did go psychotic that he takes the blame for it, but I understand now that it's not him because they checked the DNA. And he'll be charged in California with some other crimes involving child pornography. And he's just the kind of guy who read up on it pretty well, created it in his mind, made an entire story of a fantasy, and then acted on it. And he got a lot of publicity. There have been other people who have confessed to crimes who didn't do them, but we find out. And they do it for a reason. They like the attention.
Is that really it? I mean, is that really the attractant? Are they're after it for the high for them is getting the attention, is getting people to talk about them on some sort of scale?
Well, he gets the notoriety.
Yeah.
I don't know if he knew they were going to find out he didn't do it or not.
Well, because that's actually another question. Do you think he believes he did it?
Could be. I don't know how psychotic he is. I haven't seen a guy.
Yeah.
But if they do testing on him and he turns out to be paranoid or schizophrenic or some type like that, sure, he could believe it. And he can create an entire story around it. He can make it sound so real, you'd believe him.
So who are these people, the ones that truly are guilty? Who are they? Can I pick them out walking down the street? Can I say...
You can't pick them out, and unfortunately, they could look at a bunch of kids in the street and pick out who would be the next victim. They can just see it. And you can't.
Are they always white guys that are balding? I mean, that's we look at Ted Bundy. We see. I mean, that seems to be what we see on TV.
Ted Bundy had a head of hair.
That's true.
Oh, that's true.
Handsome.
Okay.
Dahmer had a head of
Manson
hair. Yeah. Gary Gunther had a head of hair. These people.
Okay.
So you're off the hook.
Yeah.
I find that they're the majority that are around, because there's more white people. But there's also a huge amount of minorities who commit these crimes. I've seen Asians and Afro-Americans and Hispanics, even from other countries, from Fiji, from Africa, from Asia, just over here. It's not
So it's not tied to
a
race.
provincial kind of crime where it only happens here and only certain people do it. Anybody does it. When you start mixing up a sex deviance with an unconcern for the victim and an unconcern for the laws or no morality, anybody could do it. It's a matter of what kind of conditioning created them.
What percentage of them had some sort of sex crime done to them when they were young?
A good part. Don't know the exact amount, but a lot of for instance, I had a little boy who had been abused by a neighbor when he was about 2. Because of his age, they couldn't prosecute the fellow because he couldn't testify. So the guy got away with it, and the kid grew up. Then the family had another daughter, and they came in one day, years later, and found the boy at about maybe 6 or 7, dry humping the daughter now, who was about 2 or so. So you can see it happened once, passed on. A lot of times it'll do that. Monkey see, monkey do. You are what you conditioned to be. That's why it's hard to stop it. But that isn't all the people. Some people just do it because it comes later on in life. There are 3 main types of sex offenders we're going to deal with. One is called the fixated. This is the type that I mentioned in my book. A fellow who gets enamored with young girls at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old at a certain age, because maybe he's only about 8, 9, 10, 11, and they're friendly with him, and he likes them, and he gets to know them. And as he grows older, he stays fixated on them. So even as he gets to be in his 20s and his 30s, these are the objects of his desire. And he goes out and actively seeks them. The fixated offender is a person who has no anxiety, has no family ties. He travels. This one fellow traveled around from city to city, just looking for this. Lived a while, looked for victims, moved on. Sure, they get caught occasionally, but they seem to slide out a lot. One of the people that I've seen, I mean, they range. One guy got 25 years for doing it, so they come down heavy on him now. Now, if you have sex with an under 11-year-old, you will get 25 years guaranteed. But will that stop it? No. I mean, crimes against murder haven't stopped murder. It's not going to stop this. But the fixator goes about looking for little boys and girls, attracting them in some way, and occasionally they will kill them. In St. Elizabeth's Hospital in New Jersey, there's a ward for sexual psychopaths like this who have actually murdered their victims. So here you are. Your child goes out for a play, and you don't see him again because this guy was out looking for him. The other type, called the regressive, is a guy who has family ties, had no problems with anything, but due to circumstances like unemployment, an injury, illness, is at home. The wife's out working, maybe the daughter's at home, or the sons. And the daughter, in that case, becomes the wife's substitute. And he starts to see the daughter as the mother. And it ends up with sex. And I've had several fathers who have done this to the biological daughters, but more often it's done to the adopted daughters or foster daughters. They just see them as a substitute, and they have such low self-esteem themselves. They have nothing going for them, and they may be drinking, and they may be drugs, and they find them desirable. And these are the majority of people who get caught that we hear about, that you see in the paper. The people who end up like this, the neighbors, their relatives, parents, and such like that. The third group, it's a burgeoning group that just came on the scene about maybe 12 years ago, are teenage offenders. These are boys 18, 19, 20, 21, so on, who had sex with their girlfriends who were underage, as young as 14, 15, 13, and sometimes with the parents' permission. It's sometimes weird stories involved. And the parents, either they get mad or the girl gets mad or a school counselor hears about it and they report it. And so the majority today that I'm seeing are these they're young males in the early 20s or 18, 19. And then they get a felony on their record. They get a rape 3 charge, a felony, and they got to register for life and whatever else. So, it's one of those things. I'm not always in agreement with what's going on because today's young girls are very aggressive. They lie about their age.
And suddenly you've got a rape 3 felony on something which you waited 3. No. You wait 3 or 4 more years, and it would have just been a really ugly breakup.
Yeah, but you're not going to blame the woman for that.
Nor would I.
Okay.
And the court, I'm not saying
I want to
that.
make sure that's not the case.
No.
I'm well, she dressed that way and she made me do it. I blame the parents.
No, I'm
for
saying
not fostering an environment.
Well, the court blames the offender because he's older.
And but throw the parents in jail.
And the law says 18. That's it, black and white.
Why don't they throw the parents in jail? It's their fault.
Oftentimes the parents are just as responsible.
Absolutely.
For the way to let the kid dress and go out, and they don't know where the kids are. The kids run away, hang out somewhere else, stay over at friend's house. Who knows what they're doing? Sure, they're going to that's what young kids do. They get in trouble. It's like I did, and maybe you did. I don't know, Mary.
I got in a little trouble.
Okay, hard to believe, Mary, but I guess so. You, I know, did.
Well, yeah, I'm looking around the room, and I'm thinking, on the trouble scale, I clearly led the pack. Yeah. Okay, here's my question. Let's take the first group that travels around that you were talking about, that does this premeditated, that's looking for it, that
this
tries
is the
not
Ted
to
Bundy,
get caught.
right?
Where do they come from? And once we catch them once, why don't we just take care of the problem right there and let them out? Because they're going to do it again, aren't they?
Okay. They come from anywhere.
Okay, so they could be anybody.
It could be your neighbor.
Okay, so we can't identify them that way. But once we catch them, why do we let them out? They're going to do it again.
I'll give you an idea of what happened here with one of the people that I use as a composite for this book. The fellow got caught. He was on probation, and he was supposed to stay away from all children. I had him under surveillance. He was passing polygraphs. So he'd get in his bus, and he'd go 20 miles away. And he'd walk around somewhere. They caught him in a fair, the Oregon State Fair. one in Clackamas, Oregon City. And the PO at that time gave him like 20 days in jail. That was it.
So this is a function of them just not being able to communicate.
Well, I think you're limited with violations like that, what you can give them.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Can you reform sexual predators?
Not this fellow.
Can you reform sexual predators in general? If we put 100 people in jail, do 50 of them come out reformed? 5?
Well, it depends on what. If you put them in jail, no, none of them come out reformed.
Okay.
But if you put them in a treatment program, for instance, it's mandated that all sexual offenders must go through treatment with any number of therapists who do it. There are also other groups. I was director of a group called Parents United for like 20-something years. That also was a support group for sex offenders and their families, trying to bring the families back together. Didn't always happen, but a lot of times it did. So when you combine all of these different modalities, your chances of having a person not reoffend are greatly increased. Without anything, it could be 100%. Now, these are talking about are the people who are called regressive, the ones who had no history of it and just got caught up with a stepdaughter or a daughter and so on. The fixated people like Bundy and such, you can't. You know how you cure them? Zap.
Well, why don't we do that then? Why are we letting them out?
Because Bundy murdered people, so they had him for that.
Why do we let people out, the premeditated people that are running around, that are picking up children or hurting people? Why do we put them in jail for 20 days or 5 years or whatever and let them back out?
Well, in Washington, now they have an island where they put certain ones who they know are incorrigible to have a change. There's only a couple of them, but it costs $1 million a person. That's why. Where's the money coming from?
Why does it cost so much? You just throw them on the island?
Well, you got to have somebody watch them. You can't keep
Why?
them as a prisoner because they're not on prison anymore. They're free. Only you're
see.
keeping them on an island. So you got to take them to town. You got to go around with them.
Can we sterilize them? Let's sterilize them. Would that
Well,
fix it?
there is a chemical castration with Depo-Provera, but even that's given very sparingly.
But if we did that for those offenders that are those premeditated ones, would that prevent them from injuring other people again?
I don't think it would totally, because I've known people like old grandparents in their 80s who had no sexual desire, still get caught with their grandchildren touching them and fooling around, having them touch them. So even without any sexual desire, you can do that.
You just put them on the island, put a big fence around it. Good luck.
Hang out together.
I'm telling you. Because what are you going to do? It offends me that we will take people who we know hands down cannot be reformed. We put them back in society and we make other people vulnerable. It's just it's offensive, and it just hurts our society in general. And I'm sorry, let's just call it for what it is. And they're guys, and they're not going to be reformed, and they're not helpful for society, and they should be locked up forever.
That's why I say we are reactors. We can't really stop it. Now, we can prevent, possibly by going, I did a lot of education. I went to churches and schools and other groups and made talks about how to watch out for people like this.
Which is still reacting. I mean, you're still reacting to it.
You may be able to stop the next one. See, in this book, I give so many examples of how the guy goes around looking for kids and how parents are so lax in their babysitting duties that he's free to act. Although kids can do what they want. You get girls 12, 13, 14, who knows where they are?
The mall.
They want to go on their own.
But you should know. I mean, you should. Isn't that the parents'
Two people
job?
are working, you know.
We've talked about
We go about that all the time. I mean,
do.
that's really the issue. That we say parents should be working. We say they should be more vigilant. They can't be in all cases. I mean, they just can't be. We don't live in a society like that anymore. I mean, I was very free in my neighborhood. It was very sheltered. It was, there was this invisible wall around about a 10-square block area, and we had the run of the place. It was like a big backyard. We couldn't do that these days. Because that's where you would go to hunt.
So a guy could be hanging out there looking for you hunting.
Yeah.
Right. And start a conversation. They're very friendly. They're very facile. They're very social. And they can get, they groom you. The regressive people who are at home, they groom the victim, through favors and taking him places and nice words, They can pick out who's needy. They know. And after they groom them a good enough time, then they start stepping over the line.
Do a lot of these guys feel guilty for what they do, or is it a very remorseless?
Oh, yes, they feel guilty. The ones who are at home feel guilty, the regressive. They go through what we call a deviant cycle. Let's say they're at rest. And then that desire starts to creep up and go around, and they're trying to fight it, but they can't because they keep pushing it. They keep looking down the little girl's dress or up at her legs, or they fantasize, or they masturbate to them all the time. And it gets up and up and up, and finally it reaches a point where they can't control it, and then they act on it. And after they act on it, then they feel remorse. It starts coming down, and they feel guilty. Well, I'll never do it again. Oh, I'll go to jail. What's wrong with me? And it gets down to rest again. But after a while, it starts building up again.
Creeps back up.
Yeah. The cycle can be weekly, monthly. I've had people do it every 3 years.
You seen any women?
Oh, yes.
What's the percentage?
Very small. Very small.
There are women sexual predators?
Absolutely. There are women who, there's a lot of babysitters, like to have liberties with their little boys they have. I had a woman who went to prison for many years because she had the 2 little kids that she was putting objects in, doing things like that. There are mothers. I had a mother who had sex with her son. We have things like that.
And is that a lot of times the mother who there was no father in the home, so in some ways the son became that in kind of the same, they started to see their son as more their partner,
Yeah, they probably act the same way the men do.
Right, the regressor.
But there's so few of them that it's hard to get a good handle on it. Now there are other kinds of sex offenders who are not in to be lumped in, but people do lump them in. There are people who, for instance, exhibit. They'll pull their pants down. They'll masturbate in front of a crowd. There are people who peek in windows, like voyeurism. There are people who make nasty phone calls and that kind of thing.
I recognize that. Oh, but that was you, Pete. It sounded kind of familiar for a second.
There are people who write letters. I had one guy who used to pick out family, just call up a number. And if, let's say, a man answered and says, this is Sergeant Jones of the police department. Sorry to tell you, your daughter was severely injured in an accident. Now, how many times you can believe they had a daughter who was not home?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they'd freak out. And then he'd go through a whole story and hang up. That's what he was doing. So these are people who are annoyances and pests and bring a lot of grief. But they're not the same as the sex offender who actually goes and gets a little child in a bad way. But yet people lump them together because there's an awful lot of exhibitors out there. We had one guy who we knew did at least 2,000 before he got caught.
What? 2,000 instances of exhibitions.
What's it take to stop?
2,000
What's it take to drive your car here, get out, hey, little girl, want to show me directions? Be exposed, drive away. Or to go to a mall and do it in the mall and run off. You don't catch these people that easy. The ones we catch are the real dumb ones who do it from their home windows. In fact, one did it right across the courtyard to a woman, and she happened to be a deputy sheriff, in civilian clothes. But these are the exceptions. Voyeurs, they're very shrewd. I've had them tell me that they can drive around neighborhoods looking, and they can spot the exact place they want to hide out to peek in windows. And there may be a tree there or a bush or, something. And they'll look and they see a light goes on. Only occasionally do they ever see anything.
So is it a game for them?
Well, it's an obsession with them because they masturbate when they do it. Don't forget, these people are looking for the satisfaction. That's what I call a deviant. They're looking for it.
Don't tell me the people that are doing this are like walking down the street as lawyers.
They're walking right in this room, maybe. I don't know.
Well, no.
They could be
in a small room.
I'm looking around. No, not in this
could you
room,
really tell that Bundy was a sexual psychopath if you met him somewhere? He was so friendly and pleasant and social and intelligent.
Polished.
Yes.
So I think, though, sometimes that we get this perception that the guy that's hiding behind the tree that's looking in somebody's window who's a perv is weird looking and comes from a social economic class or whatever. And you're saying that's not necessarily
true. Well, he
true.
might be. He might not look as good as you think he should. But, that's no big deal because a lot of people are weird walking around the streets all the time. A lot of people literally look weird walking around the streets. Maybe they didn't do anything. You don't know who it is.
You can't tell by the car they drive.
Don't know anything about them. That's the big problem with it. There's no sign. Now, people who get caught oftentimes have to put a sign on their window saying, sex predator lives here. No children allowed.
Right.
That's the only time you'll know who they are. Mm-hmm. But if you didn't know that, you wouldn't know them.
Well, didn't we just pass a law in Washington, D.C. that has a national database now that brings all the states together so you can look it up and who's in your neighborhood?
You can do it right here in Oregon. You can do it in Hillsborough, in Portland. You can find out by zip code how many people are next to you or by area.
Do sexual predators, though, normally travel out of their area to find
If they're on supervision, they can't.
Okay.
If they're off supervision, they can go wherever they want.
That's parole, right? That's like the equivalent.
Well, or probation or parole.
Are they wearing like ankle bracelets to know that they left, or we're just saying?
If they're on supervision, no. So maybe occasionally when they may get an ankle bracelet or something, but most of them are walking around free, and the probation officer is the one who has to keep check on them. But there's one probation officer for maybe 100 and something people. And it's not easy. They can get away. I just had a guy. He just got arrested Tuesday. He sent to me. He's a young fellow was sent for having sex with a young girlfriend who he's in love with. She's only about 15 or 14. And then he got caught riding in the car with her again. So he did 20 or 30 days in jail. And last week he got caught again for doing it. So in spite of all that we say to him about it and try to reason and all, he still does it.
Interesting.
That will do about 6 months.
So when we go back kind of to the law that was passed in D.C. and the registering of sex offenders and everybody can check. So even the example, that category you talked about, the teenage category of I'm 18 and I have sex with my girlfriend who's 16, I get the rape 3 by those people are on those lists too.
Oh yes.
But they're not really sex offenders.
Well, they are in the law because they'll give you the same story. Well, she looked 35, or something, or maybe she had fake ID, or she was dressed up. Well, look, young girls want to look older.
It goes back to the parents.
Yeah, and girls like older guys.
And look at, advertising.
Well, there's luck for you and I then, Pete. Because we're getting older, so maybe we'll be attracted.
Until there's a point.
Yeah, there's a deflationary curve.
Are you saying we've passed that point?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm at the same age level as you. We got to talk to somebody young.
Do a lineup. Pete, good luck.
But there's a lot of a lot of pressure on young kids to look older and to do more things. The childhood seems to be going.
And to grow up so fast, too. Yeah.
By the time they're 11, 12, I look at some of them. Wow, it's amazing.
What can our children do, and what can we do as families to help protect ourselves?
Children are very hard to explain things to because once they get the hormones going, they're going to do what they want. Look, we all knew things. We were told things. Did what we wanted to. So it's very hard. The parents can do more by being more vigilant, more alert, knowing who they're with, where they are, what they're doing. A lot of times they go out, I'll see you later. Okay, who you with? My friends, goodbye. And you don't know where they are. You got to just keep close tabs. Schools can only do so much because all they can do is report what they hear. If they hear it must be reported by anybody. You hear about a sex offense. But parents are the main line. And
is there an age where where would be the time in a child's life to discuss some of these issues with them, and when is it too soon that it's not a good thing?
Well, we started very young because a lot of little kids are vulnerable.
So you kind of start simply with nobody should touch that area.
4, 5?
3, 4, 5, 6, little kids.
So do you just go simply with things like, only you and mommy and daddy should touch that area, and anybody that does, do you just start kind of simply?
Well, number one, don't go around with strangers. Don't go with anybody if they ask you to go look for their dog or something. Mm-hmm. Stick close to us. Let us know where you are. Avoid the places that are kind of hidden, where people can be hiding. And we start this when they're really young, but because you try to catch them young with very simple commands. Don't do this, make sure of that, this and that. By the time they get to be in their teens, you can explain a lot, but oftentimes they'll still go off and do what they want because they're drinking and they're smoking dope, and things are getting very loose. And now they got the ecstasy and other things, that they're using.
My kids have a code word that they're not supposed to go with anybody who doesn't know it, and it's just something we've used in our house since.
That's a good idea, code word.
Idea.
Sure. Yeah. But these guys are real good. This fellow in the book that I...
Well, they wouldn't know it's Lederhosen. Oh, dang.
Got to change the code word now.
The fellow I wrote about is a composite of many offenders put together. And he's very, very good with kids. He doesn't relate well with adults, but he relates well with kids. And he can get them to, and this is not an exaggeration, he can get them to come closer, to sit on his lap, to let him massage them, and all these things. He can go out with women and who have children and look for those particular women and get into their good graces, and he can even have sex with them or anything else. His main object is to get the kids. Maybe I'll tell her a story tonight, or I'll tuck her in, and before you know it, he's got his hands and she, all over her, because that's his main objective.
Do sexual predators look mostly for boys or girls, or is it about the same? Or
well, majority are girls.
Okay.
Probably about 5 or 6 girls out of 10 are being molested.
what?
About 5 or 6 out of 10.
So half of all our girls are being molested.
Maybe more for all I know. And of boys...
No, hold on. I don't... Really? Half?
Well,
married to
you don't hear
I'm
about
shocked.
it. You don't hear about it.
Wow.
And people don't talk about it.
That's unbelievable.
Well, it's too easy. It's so simple.
I am flabbergasted.
I am. Now, so you're saying that 5 to 6 out of every 10 females is getting molested?
Yes.
Really?
And of the boys, it's about 3 or 4. But with the boys, they're more daring, they're more adventurous. It's not too hard to get them to go places and to do things with
Whereas
you.
girls are a little bit more
Well,
apprehensive.
girls, are a little more protected. But even when they're protected, these
nervous,
guys
Pete?
can get to them.
What, terrified?
Yeah.
Always? Just
Yeah,
getting
me
out of
too.
bed and
What made you
looking
think
at
of
my
your
little
daughter?
girl,
Yeah, Jamie,
4 years
How old's
old.
your daughter?
4.
Yeah, well, you got to, you got to look at it now. There are guys who are looking at her right now that you don't know about.
Oh, that's just awful.
Oh, yeah.
That's just
My
terrible.
kids are 2 girls are 7 and 10.
Another prime age.
Gee,
Oh, yeah.
thanks.
Sure.
And how often is it fairly common that it is family members?
Mostly
Most family
members.
members. Not the guy in the bushes hiding behind with the candy and all that. It's the family member. The majority are these regressive type, grandparents, uncles. Sometimes they even pass the kid around when they have her. I've had fathers and sons in these.
Right, I've heard of grandfathers and fathers.
Yeah, but I had fathers and sons, And grandfather never had a grandfather and a son. I had a father and a son.
What do you think makes, in those situations, the female, say maybe the mother, look the other way?
Well, you really don't want to be the one to know these things.
So it's just, you
A
just
lot of
don't want to
times,
admit it.
The little girls tell their daddy's doing something, or the stepdaddy, and she'll say, "Oh, don't make up stories like that. Just don't. I'll slap you," because the mother is afraid of losing a number of things like the economic situation, the home life, being alone again.
The fantasy she's created.
So I had a guy when I was in California. He had 4 daughters. The wife worked, and he was having sex with all the daughters. And the wife said she never knew a thing about it. But he was now in a mental prison hospital, and how did she really not know about it? And she still wanted him back.
Wow.
And the daughters wanted him back home.
What?
Yeah, there were 4 daughters.
Wow.
From age from I think it was 13 to about 17 or 18.
Man, that's dysfunctional.
Stephen, I've got to ask you, how do you do this line of work?
Yeah, good question.
Because I want to go home and shower and wash. I mean, seriously.
This is truthfully, this is a very disheartening
and do it for so long.
conversation, and you have been very successfully been doing it a long time. How do you do this? What is the attraction?
Well, I can't say to you that it doesn't bother me at times. It does, and there are times I take things home and I got to think about them at night and figure out ways of resolving something or other. But I always take the optimistic view that if I can help someone stop these things, that it eliminates future victims. And I'm always looking to do that. And the majority of people I've seen, they have stopped, at least as far as we know. They haven't been arrested again, haven't come up in records anywhere. There are a few that get away. Can't help that. Mm-hmm. But if you can keep a lot of them from doing it again, then it's worth it.
I would think there would be fairly high kind of turnover in your field. People who do get worn out by it and discouraged. And
among the probation and parole people, there's a big turnover, yes. Yeah. They like to, they stay so many years. A few of them can stay a long time. A few of them have stayed 20, 30 years. But most of them you'll see come and they'll stay a while and they'll go. It just wears you down like anything else. You're dealing with these same people all the time, hearing a lot of the same stories, although sometimes there's new stories.
Who do you think really killed John Bonet?
Is this the gossip column section of our show?
Well, we're coming full circle. Yeah. That's where we kind of started.
Well, the John Bonet thing is actually really close to my heart. I was actually in doing my undergraduate work at University of Colorado when this whole thing happened, and one of my instructors was Mike Tracy, who was at the journalism school. He's the guy who has been exchanging emails with John Mark Carr for 4 years, and so I sort of remember the place being inundated with press.
I look at the parents and say, what did the parents create here? They created this little icon who everybody could look at and admire, and those who are really sick can look at her as a beautiful, gorgeous, desirable sex object.
Because some of those outfits
were a little I've only seen a few little.
Well, she was a 6-year-old runway model. I mean, that's
essentially.
She was. They made her up like a 40-year-old, and somebody got too obsessed with it. Who? I don't know. Family, not family, friend, neighbors, stranger, I don't know.
Dr. Kahn, the name of your book is The Other Side of Evil, Memoirs of a Predatory Sex Offender, is that right?
Right. It's I wrote under the name of Mitchell K. Stevens, because I'm writing another book and I'm still working with these people. So
okay.
But the name is The Other Side of Evil, and if anybody wants to know more about it, or it'll be published in about another month. This is the final proof that I'm doing. They can email me at ka5a@msn.com, and I'll keep a list of the names and give it to the publisher, and then they can send them out. And the price will be, it won't be much, between $15, $18.
Will it be on like Amazon.com and those sorts of things?
Yeah, it'll be on the internet.
And again, it's The Other Side of Evil under Mitchell Stevens.
Mitchell K. Stevens.
Mitchell K. Stevens. Yeah. And this is a composite. This is a fictional character.
This is a novel of a composite of several people that I've known over the last 20, 30 years, and I put it together to make one predatory offender with every possibility that you could look for.
And is it a nonfiction account, non-fictionalized or fictionalized, or?
Well, it's a fictional account of actual events.
Okay.
Of those people pulled together into one character. Yeah. Very, very
I wrote it for the general public, actually. Yeah. Parents, teachers, and such, so they can get some idea of what kind of deceit, and what kind of schemes these people go through to get their way, because they do get their way.
Well, I look forward to reading it when it's done. Just let us know.
I'm frightened now.
Well, I am too. Yes. Wow. I applaud your work. I really do.
I do.
For all of us. I have great
utmost respect for you. Wow.
I don't know that I could do it because I would take it home with me way too much, and it would just chew me up.
At times I do, but look, other things in my life to do too.
Wow. Thank you.
Excellent.
Sure.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming here.
Glad to be here.
Okay. Well, that wraps up another Tuesday noon, huh?
It sure does. Another week, another Tuesday. We'll see you next week on
We're
Tuesday
out.
noon.
Thanks.
This has been Tuesday Noon for September 5th, 2006, a service of the University of Phoenix. For more information on the show, catch up with us on our website at www.tuesday12.com and write us. We look forward to hearing from you via email at theshow@tuesday12.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week, Tuesday Noon.